The lake was wrong on the first morning, and I didn't say anything. I want you to understand that. I want you to sit with it. Because everything I'm about to tell you traces back to that silence mine at 6:45 a.m. on June 9th, standing at the edge of a man-made lake in Hocking County, Ohio, watching the water move against the wind. Not with the wind, against it. The breeze was coming off the ridge to the east, pushing toward the tree line. I could feel it on my face, and the surface of the lake was rippling the other direction, toward me, toward the shore, like something underneath was pulling it. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds, and then I heard the screen door bang from the waterfront shack, and one of the senior staff, a guy named Dale who'd worked there 11 summers, walked past me carrying a kickboard and a megaphone, and didn't look at the water once. So I didn't either. My name doesn't matter. I was 20. My best friend Tessa was 20. We'd signed up together back in February when we were both broke and both failing to find anything in Columbus that would let us pay rent and still eat. Camp Briarwood had housing, meals, a stipend, and a summer on a lake in southeast Ohio surrounded by hemlock gorges and sandstone cliffs that looked like something out of a nature documentary. We'd be counselors. We'd be outside. We'd save money. It was the kind of plan that sounds responsible when you're describing it to your parents and desperate when you're honest with yourself. The camp sat on 60 acres of leased land between Hocking State Forest and the unincorporated edge of a township that doesn't really have a downtown. The property had a lake about 9 acres, spring-fed, 40 feet deep at center. 13 cabins, arranged in a half-moon around the main field. A dining hall that smelled like bleach and cedar. A waterfront with a dock and a roped swim area, and a tree line that started about 80 yards past the last cabin row and didn't stop until it hit the gorge. That tree line is important. Remember it. Staff arrived June 8th for orientation week. Campers wouldn't show until the 15th. There were 31 of us, counselors, activity leads, kitchen staff, waterfront certified maintenance. Tessa and I were in cabin row B. She had cabin 9, girls ages 10 through 12. I had cabin 10, same age group. Our cabins shared a wall, literally. The building was one structure divided down the middle with a plywood partition that didn't reach the ceiling. You could hear everything through it. Coughing, crying, whispering. We joked about it during the walkthrough, said it'd be like freshman year all over again. That was the last easy joke either of us made at Briarwood. Orientation started the morning of the 9th. Dale and the camp director, a woman named Maureen who was probably 60, with a clipboard she never put down, and a voice that sounded like she'd quit smoking 3 weeks ago and hadn't forgiven the world for it, gathered all of us in the dining hall at 7 a.m. There were pastries, there was coffee, there was a projector showing a slideshow about tick checks and buddy systems and hydration schedules. Normal stuff. And then Maureen turned off the projector and said, "Now the ones that matter." She didn't call them rules. She called them operating norms. She read them off a laminated card. 7 of them. And the room got quiet in a way that rooms don't get quiet for a PowerPoint about sunscreen protocols. I'm going to give them to you the way she gave them to us, word for word. I wrote them down that night in the margin of my staff manual because something about the way she read them flat, fast, no eye contact made me want a copy. Norm 1. No staff member enters the tree line alone after sundown. Minimum 2. No exceptions. Norm 2. If a camper reports hearing their name called from beyond the cabin row between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., the response is, "That's the echo off the gorge. Go back to sleep. Do not engage further. Do not go outside to check." Norm 3. The waterfront closes at 6 p.m., not 6:15, not 6:05. 6. All equipment locked. All flotation devices accounted for. The swim buoys are pulled to shore every night and redeployed every morning. No exceptions. Norm 4. If the lake is still before dawn, no ripple, no movement. Glass surface waterfront activities are canceled for the day. No explanation is required to campers. Use the rain day schedule. Norm 5. The maintenance shed behind the dining hall is locked between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. No one accesses it during those hours. If you hear sounds from the shed during lockout hours, you do not investigate. You radio the on-call senior and stay in your cabin. Norm 6. Head counts happen at 9 p.m., midnight, and 4 a.m. The midnight and 4 a.m. counts are silent flashlight only, no waking campers. If a count is off, you recount 3 times before reporting. Most miscounts are a kid in the bathroom. Norm 7. If fog develops over the lake between midnight and 4 a.m. and reaches the cabin row, all staff move to the dining hall. Campers stay in cabins with doors closed. This is not a drill protocol. This is not negotiable. Maureen finished reading them and looked up. Questions? The room was silent. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where everyone is looking at everyone else trying to figure out who's going to be the first person to say what they're all thinking. A guy named Marcus. He was the archery lead, maybe 23, first summer raised his hand. What happens if the fog reaches the cabins and we can't get to the dining hall? Maureen looked at him for a full 3 seconds before answering. It won't. It's never gotten past the field. But if it won't, she put the laminated card back in her clipboard. Breakfast is at 8. Waterfront cert starts at 9. Wear shoes you can get wet. That was it. I looked at Tessa. Tessa looked at me. She had the same expression she'd had when we were 17 and found a door in her grandmother's basement that had been drywalled shut from the other side, not scared exactly, but alert. She mouthed 2 words at me across the table. What the hell? I shrugged. We didn't talk about it right away. You don't, in a group setting. You tell yourself it's liability theater. You tell yourself every camp has its version of don't swim after dark and lock the doors. You tell yourself the fog thing is probably about visibility on the waterfront, and someone's lawyer wrote it weird. And for the first 3 days, that worked fine. The norms lived on the laminated card on the bulletin board in the staff room and nowhere else. Nobody mentioned them. Nobody broke them. Arrived on June 15th, and the camp turned into what camps are. Loud, busy, exhausting, good. I had 12 girls in cabin 10. They were feral in the way 10-year-olds are feral up at 5 a.m., asleep by 9:30, sunburned by Wednesday. Tessa had 11. We'd sync our schedules during rest hour and sit on the porch between our cabin halves and drink lukewarm Gatorade and talk about nothing. It felt like summer. It felt normal. It was Tessa who noticed first. End of the first camper week, porch after lights out, and she said, "Have you been doing the midnight counts?" "Yeah." "You ever miscount?" I thought about it. Once, Tuesday. But I recounted, and it was fine. Brianna was sleeping on the floor next to her bunk instead of in it. I miscounted Wednesday, Tessa said. 12 instead of 11. I didn't follow. You have 11 campers. I know. So you counted 12. I counted 12 shapes in bunks. I recounted. 11. I recounted again. 11. But the first time, the first pass, I had 12. She wasn't joking. Tessa doesn't joke about numbers. She's the kind of person who balances her checking account by hand because she doesn't trust the app to round correctly. Flashlight? Yeah, I swept every bunk. 12 the first time, 11 every time after. You were tired. I was tired, she agreed. We sat there. The gorge echo thing, she said after a while. Norm too. What about it? Has any kid in your cabin mentioned hearing their name? No. Kaylee told me Thursday morning that someone called her name from outside the window at like 2 a.m. I did the response. Echo off the gorge. She went back to sleep. And our cabin doesn't face the gorge. Our cabin faces the lake. I didn't say anything. Tessa pulled her knees up. It's an old camp, she said. Sounds carry weird over water. Yeah, I'm just logging it, in my head. That's all. Okay. Okay. We went to bed. The second week was hotter. Mid-80s every day with humidity that turned the air into something you wore instead of breathed. The gorges held the moisture. Hocking County sits in this geological bowl of Blackhand sandstone, 350 million years old, carved into gorges and recess caves that trap cool air at the bottom and push warm air up. It means the fog, when it comes from the ground, not the sky. It forms in the valleys and rises. Dale told me that during waterfront training, like it was trivia, like it was a fun fact for the campers. I started paying closer attention to the lake. Not because of what Tessa said, because of what I saw that first morning, the water moving against the wind. And because once I started watching, I couldn't stop seeing things that didn't quite fit. The swim buoys. Every morning, the waterfront staff redeployed them orange floats on a rope line marking the boundary of the swim area. Every morning, they were in the right position. But the rope between them wasn't taut. It sagged. Not a lot. Maybe 6 inches of slack in each section, which meant something during the night was pushing the buoys inward, toward each other, shrinking the roped area by a few feet in every direction. I mentioned it to Dale. Current, he said. It's a spring-fed lake. Wind current, thermal layers. Water moves overnight. That's why we reset every morning. That's why Norm 3 exists, the 6 p.m. lockdown. He was sorting life jackets by size on the rack, and he stopped. Not long. Maybe a full second of stillness. Then he went back to sorting. Norm 3 exists because kids don't need to be near water after dark. Common sense. He didn't look at me when he said it. I told Tessa that night. She was quiet for a long time. The buoys move inward, she said. Every night. Inward, not random. Inward. She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app. I watched her type. Buoys contract overnight. Reset AM. Dale, thermal layers. Didn't make eye contact. You're keeping a log? I'm keeping a log. Tessa. What? It's a summer camp. We're counselors. We're not. I know what we are. I'm keeping a log. Week 3 is when it started getting bad. Wednesday night, July 2nd. I did my midnight count. 12 girls in 12 beds wait. I had 12 girls. I'd gotten a late arrival the Monday prior, so 12 was right. I counted again. 12, fine. I stepped out onto the porch. The air was heavy, close, no breeze. The lake was about 200 yards from the cabin row, past the main field, and I could see it from the porch if I leaned on the railing. Moonlight on the surface. It was perfectly still. Glass. I stared at it. Remembered Norm 4. If the lake is still before dawn, no ripple, no movement, glass surface waterfront activities are canceled for the day. It was midnight, not dawn. Norm 4 said before dawn. This was during the night. The norm didn't cover this, but the lake was still in a way that water isn't still. Not calm. Still. Like a solid. Like something had been poured and set. I watched it for 3 minutes and nothing moved. Not a ripple from a fish. Not a ring from an insect landing. Not a breath of wind on the surface. I went back inside. I locked the door. That's not in the norms. There's no norm about locking cabin doors, but I locked it. At 4 a.m. I did the second count. 12. Fine. I looked out the window toward the lake. Ripples. Normal. Wind on water. Whatever I'd seen at midnight was gone. I told Tessa at breakfast. She showed me her log. She'd noted the same thing, same night, from her window. Glass surface, midnight. Normal surface, 4 a.m. I timed it, she said. 12:03 to 12:41. 38 minutes of total stillness. Then it started again. You watched it for 38 minutes? I couldn't stop. That was the first time one of us said something that scared me. Not the lake being still. Tessa saying she couldn't stop watching. Thursday was a normal waterfront day. The lake was moving by dawn. Norm 4 didn't trigger. Kids swam. Kids kayaked. I watched Dale monitor the swim area from his chair and tried to see anything in his posture that suggested he was watching the water the way I was starting to watch it. He wasn't. Or he was better at hiding it. Thursday night I broke a norm. I broke norm 1. I went to the tree line alone after sundown. I need to tell you why. 9:15 p.m. just after camper lights out. I was on the porch doing a final cabin sweep with my flashlight, checking windows, checking the latrine path was clear, and I saw something at the edge of the tree line, 80 yards out, right where the mowed field stopped and the hemlock started. A light, small, steady, not a flashlight, no beam, no direction, a point. Like a phone screen held at arm's length, except it wasn't the right color. Flashlights are white or yellow. Phone screens are blue-white. This was amber. It was there for maybe 5 seconds. Then it dropped, not switched off, dropped, like it fell straight down and was gone. I told myself it was a firefly. Ohio has fireflies in July. But fireflies pulse. This was steady. They drift. I put on my shoes and walked toward the tree line. I got about 40 yards from the porch, halfway across the field, and the katydids stopped. If you've never been in rural Ohio in July, you don't understand what that means. The katydids are constant. They are the sound of the air itself. 10,000 of them in every direction all night. So loud it becomes silence because your brain stops registering it. You don't hear katydids. You hear when they stop. They stopped. Every single one. Simultaneously, like a switch. I was standing in the middle of the main field in dead silence. No insects, no frogs from the lake, no wind, nothing. And from the tree line from exactly where the amber light had been, I heard breathing. Not an animal. I grew up in Ohio. I know what deer sound like moving through brush. I know coyotes. I know the weird huffing sound raccoons make when they're startled. This was human breathing. Slow, steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The kind of breathing someone does when they're trying to stay calm, or when they're watching something and don't want to be heard. I turned around and walked back to the cabin. Not fast, not slow, the same speed I'd been walking when I came out. I didn't run because I didn't want whatever was at the tree line to know I'd heard it. I got to the porch, I went inside, I locked the door. I sat on my bunk and I shook for about 10 minutes. I didn't tell Tessa, not right away, because I'd broken Norm 1 alone and I needed to understand why the norm existed before I admitted I'd violated it. Here's what I figured out lying in my bunk that night. The norms weren't safety theater, and they weren't liability language. They were containment. 7 different instructions, each addressing a different behavior, all designed to do the same thing. Keep everyone inside an invisible perimeter between the cabin row and the waterfront during specific hours, without ever telling anyone what was outside that perimeter. Norm 1. Don't enter the trees alone after dark. Stay inside the perimeter. Norm 2. Don't engage with voices calling names at night. Don't respond to what's outside the perimeter. Norm 3. Leave the waterfront by 6. The lake edge of the perimeter closes early. Norm 4. If the lake is glass, cancel water activities. The perimeter has been breached from below. Norm 5. Don't go near the maintenance shed at night. Something uses it. Norm 6. Count heads 3 times a night. Verify nothing has entered the perimeter. Norm 7. If the fog reaches the cabin row, evacuate to the dining hall. The perimeter has failed. Fall back to the hard shelter. I sat up in bed. Norm 7 wasn't about fog. Norm 7 was the emergency protocol. The fog wasn't the threat. The fog was the indicator that the threat had crossed the field, and Maureen had said it had never reached the cabins. Had never. Not would never. Friday, July 4th weekend. Half the campers went home for the holiday. We were down to about 40 kids across all cabins and a skeleton crew of 8 staff. Maureen left. Dale stayed. The camp got quiet in a way it hadn't been since orientation. Friday night. I did my midnight count. 7 girls. Down from 12 because of the holiday departures. 7 in bunks. Fine. I stepped onto the porch. Tessa was already there. She didn't say anything. She pointed at the lake. The fog was on it. Not mist, not haze, fog. Thick, white, ground-level fog rolling off the water surface like something boiling in slow motion. It covered the lake completely. It was spreading onto the shore. I looked at my watch. 12:14 a.m. How long? I whispered. Started about 5 minutes ago. I was watching from the window. Norm 7. I know. It says if it reaches the cabin row, We go to the dining hall. It's not at the cabin row. It's on the lake. We watched it. The fog moved like a living thing, not evenly, not with the wind. It pushed in tendrils, long fingers of white extending across the field from the waterfront toward the cabins, then pulling back, then extending again a few feet further. It was testing the distance. "I need to tell you something," I said. I told her about the tree line, the amber light, the breathing. She was quiet. Then she showed me her phone log. She'd added entries I hadn't seen. June 28th, 1:15 a.m. Sound from maintenance shed. Metallic scraping. Reported to Dale. Dale. "Raccoons get in sometimes." Shed was locked. Raccoons don't have keys. June 30th, midnight count. Counted 12 in my cabin. Have 11 campers. Recounted. 11. Third count. 11. First count was wrong. Probably. July 1st, 3:47 a.m. Woke to silence. No insects. Lasted approximately 90 seconds. Checked window. Nothing visible. Insects resumed suddenly, all at once, not gradually. July 2nd. Confirmed. Lake glass still from 12:03 to 12:41. Water moved against wind from 12:41 to at least 1:15, checked 3 times. Movement was toward shore, all shores simultaneously. "All shores simultaneously?" I said. The water was moving outward from center, in every direction, like something displaced it. From below. From below. We watched the fog. It had reached the halfway point of the field, maybe 40 yards from the cabin row. "What do we do?" I said. "We follow the norms. The norms say the cabin row." "Tessa, the norms were written by someone who never explained what they're for. The norms were written by someone who's been running this camp for years, and everyone who's followed them is still alive." That sentence landed. Everyone who's followed them is still alive. Not everyone is fine. Not everything is normal. Everyone who's followed them is still alive. Like that was the standard. Like survival was the ceiling. We went inside our respective cabin halves. I locked my door. I watched the fog through the window. It stopped, 20 yards from the cabin row. It just stopped, like it hit glass, like there was a wall there I couldn't see. The tendrils reached and reached and reached, and then withdrew, slowly, back across the field, back to the waterfront, back onto the lake. By 1:15 a.m., the lake surface was clear, and the katydids were screaming, and the air was just air again. My 4 a.m. count was 7, correct. Fine, Saturday morning. I found Dale at the waterfront shack. I didn't ask a subtle question. "What's in the lake, Dale?" He was unwinding the swim buoy rope. He didn't stop. "Fish, turtles, catfish on the bottom, some bass." "Dale, there's nothing in the lake. The fog last night. Radiation fog. Happens all summer in the valleys down here. Cold air settles, moisture condenses. You get ground fog. It's in every weather briefing. It moved against the wind. Fog doesn't move with wind. Fog moves with thermal gradients. You're not a meteorologist. Are you?" He stopped unwinding the rope. He set it down on the dock. He looked at me for the first time during the conversation, and his face was doing something I'd never seen on a person before. He was angry and sad at the same time, And behind both of those he was tired. 11 summers of tired. Follow the norms, he said. That's the job. Follow the norms and get the kids through the summer and go home. Who wrote them? I don't know. You've been here 11 years. The norms were here before me. Maureen's been here 22 years. They were here before her. The laminated card in the staff room is a copy of a copy of a copy. The original is in a filing cabinet in the main office and it's typed on a typewriter. Follow them and you're fine. Don't follow them and you find out why someone wrote them. Has anyone, 2004, a maintenance guy, new, went to the shed at night because he heard a sound and thought a pipe burst. By the time Dale, the previous Dale, my predecessor, got there, the shed door was open and the guy was standing inside in the dark. Not moving. Not responding. They took him to the hospital in Logan, and he couldn't explain what happened. He said the shed was empty, and he walked in, and then it was morning, and people were shaking him. He lost about 4 hours. He didn't come back. What happened to him? He works at a hardware store in Lancaster. He's fine. He's just never been back. And that's the only one I'm going to tell you about. Follow the norms. He went back to the rope. I told Tessa everything. She added it to the log. We had a conversation that night sitting on the porch, voices low, kids asleep behind us that I've replayed more times than anything else from that summer. We could leave, I said. We signed a contract. Tessa, the contract didn't mention anything about fog that moves on its own and something living in a lake. Nothing's happened to us. Nothing's happened to any camper. The norms work. You don't know that they work. You know that so far, while following them, nothing has happened. That's not the same thing. She was quiet. What do you actually think is going on? She asked. I'd been thinking about this. I'd been thinking about it constantly, actually. In the background of every activity and every meal and every campfire sing-along. I think the lake is the center. I think something is in it, or under it, or connected to it, that doesn't behave like water. I think it's more active at night. I think the fog is, it's like breath. The lake breathes, and when it breathes out, the fog comes over the field, and the norms, the perimeter, they keep everyone back from the edge of whatever it can reach. That's insane. Yeah. Like actually insane. You're describing a lake that breathes. I'm describing what I've seen. You've seen fog and still water and buoys that shift in the night. That's not a breathing lake. That's a lake. Then why are there 7 rules about it? She didn't answer. You have a log, Tessa. You've been documenting anomalies for 3 weeks. Why are you pushing back? Because if I agree with you, then we're working at a summer camp with children on top of something that's wrong. And the response to that can't be follow the norms. The response to that has to be getting every kid out of here. And we can't do that. We don't have authority. We don't have evidence that would hold up. We have a log in my phone notes app. So either I agree with you and we're helpless, or I disagree with you and the norms are sufficient. I'm choosing sufficient. That was the first crack between us. Not a fight, not a disagreement about facts. A disagreement about what to do with the facts. Tessa chose function. I chose understanding. And those 2 things weren't compatible at Camp Briarwood Because understanding meant looking closer at things the norms were specifically designed to prevent you from looking at. Second session started July 7th. Fresh batch of campers, full cabins again, 12 girls in mine, 11 in Tessa's. Things escalated. July 9th. 3 girls in cabin 4, the one closest to the waterfront, reported hearing singing from the lake at approximately 2 a.m. Not words, melody. A slow, atonal hum that rose and fell in a rhythm they couldn't reproduce when asked. The cabin counselor, a girl named Jess, followed Norm too, told them it was the echo off the gorge. They went back to sleep. Jess told me about it at lunch. She wasn't scared. She was confused. It didn't sound like an echo, she said. Echoes repeat. This was continuous. What did it sound like? Like the lake was vibrating? Like if you put your ear against a pipe and the pipe was carrying a sound from somewhere far away. Except the pipe was the air. July 11th. Norm 4 triggered. Dawn. The lake was glass, not a ripple. Dale canceled waterfront for the day. No explanation to campers. Rain day schedule. Except it wasn't raining. It was 91 degrees and cloudless, and the kids couldn't understand why they couldn't swim, and the staff couldn't explain it, because there was nothing to explain. The lake is too still is not a sentence that works on a 12-year-old. That day, during the landlocked schedule, I walked the perimeter of the field. I wanted to see the tree line in daylight. I found something. About 60 yards north of the cabin row, just inside the tree line, there was a clearing. Not natural, the brush had been cut. Recently, within the last few weeks, the clearing was maybe 10 feet across. In the center, someone had driven a metal stake into the ground. Attached to the stake was a coil of wire, thin, copper-colored, maybe 30 feet of it, looped neatly. The wire ran from the stake down into the ground through a narrow hole. I didn't touch it. I looked at it for a long time. Then I looked around the rest of the tree line. I found 4 more. 5 stakes, 5 coils of wire, spaced roughly evenly around the tree line perimeter, each one just inside the forest edge, each one with a wire driven into the ground. They formed a half circle from the north end of the property to the south end. The other half of the circle would have gone through the lake. Someone had wired the perimeter. Someone was maintaining it. The brush cuts were fresh. The wire was clean, no rust, no weathering. This wasn't something from 20 years ago. This was current. I found Dale. There are stakes in the tree line. He looked at me, not surprised, not confused, resigned. You went into the tree line. During the day. Norm 1 says after sundown. Norm 1 says what it says. My advice says, stay out of the trees. Dale, there are copper wire stakes driven into the ground in a semicircle around the camp. Someone is maintaining them. Who? I maintain them. The silence after that sentence lasted a long time. Every 2 weeks, he said. I check the stakes, I check the wire. I replace anything corroded. The wire goes about 8 feet into the ground. I don't know what it connects to. I don't know what it does. My predecessor told me to maintain them, and I maintain them. You don't know what they do? I know that when I maintain them, the fog doesn't cross the field. I know that in 2011, I was late on maintenance 3 weeks instead of 2, and the fog reached the cabin row for the first time in a decade. and we evacuated to the dining hall, and in the morning there were marks on the outside of the cabin doors. What kind of marks? Like something tested the handles. All of them. Every cabin. In sequence. In sequence. North to south. The order you'd check them if you were walking the row. Dale. Maintain the stakes. Follow the norms. Get the kids through the summer. That's the job. That's been the job since before I got here. And it'll be the job after I leave. And I'm asking you to stop looking for answers that aren't going to help you do the job. I went back to Tessa. I told her about the stakes. I showed her photos on my phone. I expected her to add them to the log. She didn't. I'm not putting that in the log, she said. Why? Because the log is for anomalies. The stakes aren't anomalies. The stakes are the containment. Dale is maintaining the containment. The containment works. I don't need to know why. You don't want to know what's being contained. I want to keep 12 children alive for 6 more weeks. And I want to go home and I want to deposit my stipend. And I want this to be a weird summer I tell people about at parties. I do not want to know what's in the lake. I do not want to know what the wire does. I do not want to know why the fog stops at the field. And I especially do not want to know what tested the cabin doors in 2011, because that answer is not going to make me better at my job. It's going to make me unable to do my job. That's not Tessa. You started the log. You were the one counting shapes in bunks. You were the one timing the stillness. What happened? I decided I'd rather follow the rules than understand them. Since when? Since I realized understanding them means going closer to whatever they're protecting us from. And the only direction that leads is toward the water. The crack widened. We stopped talking about it. Not officially, there was no conversation where we agreed to stop. Tessa just stopped sharing entries from her log. I stopped telling her what I noticed. We still sat on the porch at rest hour. We still drank lukewarm Gatorade. But there was a space between us that hadn't been there before, and it was shaped exactly like the main field between the cabin row and the lake. July 16th. I couldn't sleep. Midnight count. 12. All fine. I went to the window facing the lake. The fog was back, heavier than the 4th of July. So thick I couldn't see the water. The entire field between the waterfront and the midpoint was a white wall, maybe 8 feet tall. Moving. Slowly. The tendrils reached. I watched them. One tendril extended further than the others past the midpoint, past the 40-yard line I'd mentally marked, past where it had stopped before. It crossed the line. It kept coming. I counted distance by the landmarks I knew, past the fire pit, past the flagpole, past the sports equipment shed. It stopped about 25 yards from the cabin row, 10 yards closer than it had ever been. I looked at the maintenance stakes, the ones at the north and south ends of the tree line that I could see from my window. In the moonlight, faintly, the copper wire was glowing. Not bright, not like a light, like something warm, like metal conducting a current. The fog held at 25 yards. It didn't advance, but it didn't retreat either. It just stayed, pressing against something I couldn't see. At 1:47 a.m., I heard the singing. The 3 girls in cabin 4 had described it. And Jess had described it, but hearing a description and hearing the thing are different. It came from inside the fog, low. Not a melody, not exactly. A vibration with pitch, like a cello note sustained underwater. It rose and fell, but never repeated, no loop, no verse, no structure I could identify. It was the kind of sound that makes you lean forward, that makes you want to walk toward it. Not because it's beautiful, because it sounds like it's almost a word. And if you could just get a little closer, you'd hear what it's saying. I gripped the windowsill. My feet were on the floor, and they wanted to move. Not metaphorically, physically. My weight shifted forward, and I had to actively resist the momentum. I closed the window. I put my hands over my ears. The singing came through my hands. It came through the glass. It came through the walls. 4:12 a.m. I opened my eyes. I was sitting on the floor with my back against the door. The singing had stopped. I didn't remember sitting down. I'd lost about 2.5 hours. I scrambled up. Head count: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. 11. I had 12 campers. I recounted. 11, recounted. 11, recounted. 11. Madison's bunk was empty. The sheets were pulled back like she'd gotten up. Not like she'd been taken. The blanket was folded at the foot of the bed, the way she always folded it. Because she was the kind of kid who made her bunk every morning without being asked. I hit the radio. Immediately. Check the latrine. I checked the latrine. Empty. Check the porch. I opened the door to the porch. Madison was sitting on the top step, facing the field, facing the lake. Her hands were in her lap and her eyes were open, and she was completely still. Madison. Nothing. Madison. Nothing. I knelt next to her. I could see her breathing, slow and even, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The same rhythm I'd heard at the tree line. I touched her shoulder. She blinked, looked at me, looked around, started crying. I heard my name, she said. Someone called my name from the field. Norm, too. If a camper reports hearing their name called from beyond the cabin row between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., the response is, "That's the echo off the gorge. Go back to sleep." I said the words. I said them exactly as written. I brought her inside. I locked the door. She went back to sleep. I didn't sleep again that night. At breakfast I told Dale. He listened without expression. Was she past the porch? No, she was on the step. The step is inside the perimeter. By what? 3 feet? By enough. Dale, a child, walked out of her bunk toward the lake in the middle of the night because something called her name. And the Norm caught it. She heard her name. She woke up. She went to the porch. She didn't leave the porch. The Norm held. The Norm didn't hold. I held. I did the 4 a.m. count. If I hadn't, that's what the count is for. If I'd still been, if I hadn't woken up when I did. But you did. Dale. What happens if she'd gone further? He didn't answer. What happens if a camper goes past the porch, across the field, and reaches the water? No one's reached the water. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. I went to Tessa. I told her everything. The fog reaching closer, the singing, the lost time. Madison on the porch. Tessa listened, and then she said something that broke something between us that has never been repaired. You lost 2 hours. Yeah. You sat down against the door and lost 2.5 hours. I fell asleep. I was tired. The singing, you didn't fall asleep. You described the singing, and you said you gripped the windowsill because your body wanted to move toward it. And then you lost 2 hours. That's not sleep. What are you saying? I'm saying you were affected. The singing affected you. You lost time. Okay. You went to the tree line alone. You've been looking at the water. You've been investigating the stakes. You've been pulling at this every edge, every seam, every answer, and now you're losing time. Tessa, the norms don't just keep things out. They keep us away from it. The distance isn't just physical. It's attentional. Every time you look at it, every time you study it, every time you try to understand it, you're crossing the perimeter. Not with your body, with your mind. And it noticed. I didn't say anything. I need you to stop, she said. I need you to follow the norms and stop looking and stop asking questions and be a counselor and get through the summer. I can't do this without you, and I'm losing you to something I can't see. You're not losing me. You lost 2 hours sitting against a door you don't remember sitting against. That's what losing someone looks like. She was right. I knew she was right. And I hated her for being right because being right meant the answer to every question I'd been asking was the same answer. Stop asking. I stopped. For 2 weeks, I stopped. I followed the norms. I did my counts. I didn't look at the lake after dark. I closed my curtains at night. When the fog came, and it came 3 more times in those 2 weeks, I didn't watch it. When the singing started faint, distant, barely audible through closed windows and drawn curtains, I put in earplugs and counted my breaths. The norms held. The norms held because I stopped testing them. Tessa was right. Attention was the breach. Not the tree line, not the cabin door, not the swim buoys. Attention. The thing in the lake, whatever it was, whatever the norms were built around, responded to being observed. Every time I'd looked closely, it had come closer. The still water. The fog on the first night I really watched. The singing the night I stood at the window. Madison hearing her name the same night I lost 2 hours. I'd been pulling it toward us, not physically, but something about sustained focus, sustained curiosity, acted like the opposite of the copper wire in the ground. The wire pushed it back. Attention pulled it forward. I stopped looking. The fog stopped advancing. 2 more weeks, then a week, then the last 3 days. Final session, closing ceremonies, parents arriving in SUVs and minivans, hugs, crying kids who didn't want to leave, counselors exchanging numbers, normal end-of-summer stuff that felt like oxygen after being underwater. Last night, August 1st, staff were allowed to stay through the 2nd to clean up. Most people left that day. By evening it was me, Tessa, Dale, Maureen, and 2 maintenance guys. I was packing in cabin 10. Tessa came through the partition. It didn't reach the ceiling, remember, so she'd learned to boost herself over it weeks ago. Come outside, she said. We stood on the porch. The sun was setting behind the ridge. The lake was gold and orange, and the hemlocks were black against the sky, and it was beautiful. Actually beautiful. Not beautiful for a place that terrified me, beautiful. Just beautiful. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." I didn't stop logging. "What?" "When I told you to stop looking, when I said attention was the breach, I stopped telling you what I was finding. But I didn't stop finding it." She opened her phone. The Notes app. The log I'd seen in early July had maybe 15 entries. This one had over 100. "Tessa, I know. You told me to stop because attention pulls it closer, and then you kept. I know what I did. That's you were Tessa, every night. You were watching every night. I was careful. I watched from inside. Windows closed. Curtains cracked. Not open. Never more than 10 minutes at a time. I thought if I was disciplined about it, if I controlled the exposure, I could document without attracting. And?" She was quiet. "And it worked. For a while. The fog came on schedule every 3 to 4 nights, always between midnight and 2 a.m. It advanced to the 25-yard line and held. The singing happened twice. The lake went glass on 6 different nights. I cataloged all of it." "What changed?" "July 22nd. I was watching through the curtain crack 2 minutes. Max, and a tendril of fog broke off from the main body. Not toward the cabins, toward my cabin. Just mine. It moved laterally across the field until it was directly in front of my window, and then it stopped. It found you. It found me. And it waited. For as long as I watched it, it waited. Like it was watching me back." "What did you do?" "I closed the curtain. It withdrew. I know because I opened the curtain again 20 minutes later and—" "You opened it again?" "I needed to see if it was still there." "Tessa, that's what it wanted." I know that now. I didn't know it then. Or I knew it, and I couldn't stop." She locked her phone. She put it in her pocket. "Dale's stakes," she said. "The copper wire. I found something." "When?" "Last week. I followed one of the wires, not down along. They're not independent. They connect underground. All 5 stakes feed into a single line that runs under the field and terminates at the lake." "How do you know?" "Because the 6th stake is in the lake, about 10 feet out from the shore, underwater. I found it during a daytime waterfront session when I was doing a sweep. It's driven into the lake bed. The wire comes up out of the mud and just ends. Cut clean. Like someone severed the circuit. Someone cut the wire. Someone cut the wire. And based on the corrosion pattern, it's been cut for a long time. Years, maybe longer. So the perimeter is a semicircle. It was supposed to be a full circle around the camp and through the lake. Something cut the lakeside. The containment is only on the land. Whatever's in the water has been inside the perimeter this entire time. The stakes aren't keeping it out. They're keeping it from leaving through the forest. Keeping it here. Keeping it here. In the lake, in the camp, with us." I sat down on the step. The same step Madison had been sitting on a month before. "The norms aren't protection," I said. "The norms are management. They manage the contact. They keep the interactions survivable, but they don't prevent them. They can't. The thing is already inside the perimeter. It's been inside the perimeter since someone cut that wire. Dale knows. Dale has to know. Maureen. Maureen has to know. They've been running a summer camp on top of something they can't contain, and they know they can't contain it, and the norms are just what they're the instruction manual for living with it. For surviving it. There's a difference. We sat there until the sun went down. The katydids started. The lake went dark. Somewhere behind us, Dale was loading supplies into a truck. "What do we do?" I said. "We leave tomorrow. We go home. We deposit our checks. We never come back." And the camp. The camp has been running since before the norms were typed. It'll run next summer. Dale will maintain the stakes he knows about, and not the one he doesn't, and the fog will come, and the singing will come, and some new 20-year-old will hear it, and either follow the norms or not. That's not enough. It's what's available. We left the next morning, August 2nd. I drove. Tessa rode passenger. We didn't talk for the first hour. When we hit Columbus, when the highway was full of cars, and the air smelled like exhaust and fast food instead of hemlock and lake water, Tessa said, "I need to tell you one more thing." "Okay." The last night, when we were sitting on the porch after sunset. Yeah. The lake was still while we were talking, perfectly still. For the entire conversation. I didn't look. I know you didn't. I did. And when I told you about the wire being cut, when I said the thing is already inside the perimeter, the lake rippled. Once, from center, outward, like it heard me. Tessa. One ripple, then still again, while we were sitting right there. She turned her phone off. She put it in the glove box. She closed the glove box. "I'm going back next summer," she said. The car went very quiet. "You're going back?" "I've already re-signed. I signed the contract for next summer 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks you signed while we were still there, while you were documenting. Because of the documenting. Because someone needs to understand what's in that lake, and the norms aren't designed to answer that question. They're designed to prevent it from being asked. And I can't. She stopped. I can't leave it unanswered. "Tessa, you told me to stop looking. You told me attention was the breach. You told me I was being pulled toward it. You were. And you're not? I'm choosing to go back. That's different from being pulled." "How? How is that different? You said you couldn't stop watching. You said the fog came to your window, and you opened the curtain again 20 minutes later because you needed to see." That's not choice, Tessa. That's the same thing that made me lose 2 hours. Then I'll find out. You'll find out if it's a choice or a pull. Yes. And if it's a pull, then at least I'll know. At least you'll know. While you're sitting on a porch at 2 a.m. and the fog is at your window and the singing is in your ears and you can't stop watching, because the thing you were studying studied you back, and now it knows your attention schedule. You'll know. She didn't answer. I dropped her at her apartment. We hugged. It felt final. Not in the way that summer goodbyes feel final, in the way that hospitals feel final. I drove home. That was August 2nd. It's October now. Tessa answers my calls. She texts me back. She's enrolled in classes. She goes to work. She does everything a normal person does. But 3 times in the last 2 months, she's mentioned that she's been looking at the weather data for Hocking County. Fog patterns, humidity, thermal gradients. She uses the same language Dale used: radiation fog, thermal layers, like she's been reading about it, studying it, preparing. Last week she sent me a text. Just one line: I found the manufacturer of the copper wire. It's not a standard gauge. It's custom. I didn't respond. She sent another one the next day. Have you had trouble sleeping since August? I have. I've had trouble sleeping since August. I didn't tell her that. Because here's the thing I haven't told you yet. The thing I've been circling around this whole time. The night we left August 1st. The night we sat on the porch and Tessa told me about the severed wire and the lake rippled once I went to bed after she did. I was the last person on the porch. And before I went inside, I looked at the lake. I didn't mean to. My eyes moved, the way your eyes move toward a sound. Except there was no sound, just the pull. The lake was glass, perfectly still. And on the surface, in the moonlight, I could see the fog beginning to form. Not on the water, under it. A white shape beneath the surface, slowly rising, spreading outward toward the shore. And for 1 second, I saw something in the center of the lake that was not water and not fog and not a reflection. It was looking at me. Not with eyes. I don't mean eyes. I mean the attention. The same attention I'd been giving it all summer, the focus, the curiosity, the need to understand, was coming back at me. From the center of the lake, directed, intentional, reciprocal. I had been studying it. It had been studying me. And the difference between me and Tessa is that I looked away. She calls me every Sunday. We talk about classes and rent and groceries, normal things. And every Sunday, the call goes a little longer. And every Sunday, she mentions the camp one more time than the week before. And every Sunday, I hear something in her voice that I recognize because I heard it in my own voice the night I stood in the field. And the katydids stopped. She's not scared. She should be scared. Camp Briarwood opens for its next summer season in June. I checked. It's already hiring. The posting is online. Counselors needed. Housing and meals included. Stipend. Summer on a lake in southeast Ohio. 7 operating norms provided during orientation. Tessa's name is on the returning staff list. I think about the wire in the lake, the one that's been cut, the circuit that used to be complete stakes on the land and stakes in the water, a full circle, and now isn't. And I think about how containment works, how it requires maintenance, how Dale checks the land stakes every 2 weeks, but nobody checks the lake. And I think about Tessa in that water, next July, doing a waterfront sweep, finding the stake, following the wire down, into the mud, closer. I don't sleep well anymore. Not because of nightmares, because it's quiet. Because the apartment I live in is in Columbus, and there should be traffic and sirens and noise, and instead, some nights, not every night, but more nights than there used to be, it gets quiet. The kind of quiet where the air holds still and the sounds of the city drop away, and there's nothing except silence and the faint, distant sense that something very far away and very patient is paying attention. Not to Tessa, to me. Because I looked. Because I can't prove I stopped. because the night I left, I looked at the lake one final time, and looking was enough. The norms said, don't investigate, don't engage, don't go outside, don't respond to voices, don't be near the water after dark, don't watch the fog, don't try to understand. I broke all of them. And the thing about the norms, the thing Dale never said, and Maureen never said, and nobody who's ever worked at that camp will ever say out loud, is that they're not rules. They're terms. Conditions of coexistence between the camp and the lake, negotiated by someone whose name is lost, maintained by people who know just enough to keep the wire clean and the fog at the field, and the children in their bunks. And the seventh norm, the emergency protocol, the one about the fog reaching the cabin row, isn't a contingency. It's a countdown. Because Maureen said the fog had never reached the cabins, and Dale said in 2011 it reached the cabin row. And I watched it stop at 25 yards, and Tessa watched it come to her window. Something is getting closer, every summer, every year, a few feet further, and the wire that used to hold the circle is cut, and the stakes on the land are the only thing left. And Dale is getting older, and someday Dale won't come back. And whoever replaces him won't know about the stakes, and the fog will cross the field on a night in July, and it will reach the cabin doors, and it will test the handles, and this time there will be children on the other side, and Tessa will be there, inside the perimeter that isn't one, following norms that were always terms, watching something that has been watching her since she first cracked the curtain. I know what the next question is. You want to know what I'm going to do about it? Nothing. I'm going to do nothing. Because the norms taught me exactly one true thing this summer. The distance between you and something terrible isn't measured in yards. It's measured in attention. And every minute I spend thinking about it, talking about it, telling you about it, it gets closer. Not to the camp, to me, to wherever I am, to this room. And the only thing keeping it at the field is the amount of distance between my thoughts and the water. So I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to stop thinking about it. I'm going to close this the way Dale closes the waterfront every evening at 6 p.m. Not because the danger is gone, but because looking at it after dark is what lets it look back. And if you're smart, you'll stop thinking about it too, but you won't. I know you won't. Because I've just done to you what the lake did to me. I gave you a question you can't answer. And now you're going to keep looking.